At just 12 years old, Zariah Coleman was flying for the very first time, feeling a whole world away from her simple life in Baltimore. But this trip, a fragile dream held together by her mom's love and sacrifice, was about to take a terrifying turn. The rich man sitting next to her, a silent, intimidating presence who hadn't said one word to her, suddenly collapsed. In that moment of pure panic, 30,000 feet in the air, Zariah did something no one else could: she saved his life. But it wasn't just her bravery that would make this day unforgettable. It was the shocking secret he whispered to her moments later, a secret that would connect their two completely different worlds and change her life forever. Section 1, The Girl Who Carried the Weight of the World. The air on Flight 2187 felt cold and sterile, so different from the humid, familiar air of East Baltimore Zariah had left just hours before. She was in seat 14A, a window seat, but she hadn't dared to look out. Her eyes were glued to the worn-out cover of a library book on her lap. That book, like her sneakers and her slightly too small jacket, was from a thrift store, a quiet symbol of a life built on making do. She clutched her faded purple backpack to her chest like a shield. It held her whole world for the next week: a couple of outfits, a toothbrush, and a picture of her father. Zariah was small for 12, with big, expressive eyes that seemed to hold a weight far beyond her years. She was a quiet kid, an observer. She'd learned early that it was safer to listen than to speak, better to be invisible than to be noticed. Flying was a spectacular, terrifying dream that her mother, Lena, had worked so hard to make real. Lena worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices by night and waiting tables on weekends. Her hands were always rough, and her smile was always tired, but it was always there for Zariah. "This is your chance to see a different piece of the world, baby," Lena had told her, pushing the ticket into her hand. "You're going to visit your aunt, and you're going to see that the world is bigger than our block. You deserve that." But as the plane climbed, Zariah didn't feel free. She just felt anxious, like she didn't belong. The quiet tones, the clinking ice in glasses, the crisp flight attendant uniforms, it all screamed of a world she wasn't part of. The pitying look from a flight attendant when she confirmed Zariah was flying alone just made the feeling worse. Zariah had seen that look 1,000 times. It was the look people gave when they saw the patch on her jeans or the worn soles of her shoes. It made her want to shrink. The man in seat 14B was definitely a part of that other world. He was older, maybe in his late 50s, wearing a suit so perfectly tailored it looked like it was made for him. His silver-streaked hair was perfect, and a fancy watch glinted every time he moved his wrist. He hadn't even glanced at her when he sat down, just opened a sleek, impossibly thin laptop and disappeared into a world of spreadsheets. He was a mountain of quiet power and wealth. Sitting next to him, Zariah felt like a tiny, misplaced stone, trying to make herself even smaller. She'd overheard a flight attendant call him Arthur Vance. The name meant nothing to her, but his vibe said it all: powerful, distant, untouchable. Her father, David, had been the total opposite. He was warm, loud, and bursting with life. He was a paramedic, a man who ran toward chaos, not away from it. He died when Zariah was only 7, a sudden heart attack that left a hole in their small family that not even her mother's endless love could truly fill. Before he died, he had taught Zariah things. "You never know when you'll be the only one who can help, Z," he used to say, showing her how to check for a pulse or the right rhythm for chest compressions on a pillow. "The most important thing is not to panic. You breathe, you focus, and you act. You have a hero's heart, kiddo. Never forget that." She hugged her backpack tighter, the memory both a comfort and a pain. She was his daughter, the girl with the hero's heart. But sitting there, next to a silent millionaire, she just felt like a scared little girl from Baltimore, a long, long way from home. Section 2, The Storm Within and Without. About an hour into the flight, things started to change. The gentle hum of the engines was slowly drowned out by growing turbulence. The plane began to shudder. Gently at first, but then the jolts became more violent and unpredictable, sending nervous whispers through the cabin. The seatbelt sign pinged on, and the captain's voice, strained but calm, announced they were flying through an unexpected storm. With every lurch of the plane, Zariah's knuckles turned white. Her stomach was a knot of motion sickness and pure fear. Outside, the peaceful blue sky was gone, replaced by an angry, churning gray. Rain hammered the window, and flashes of lightning lit up monstrous clouds. The feeling of panic in the cabin was so thick you could taste it. A baby started crying, and someone behind her began whispering prayers. But Zariah's own fear was about to be dwarfed by a much bigger crisis. She risked a glance at the man beside her, Arthur Vance. He'd put his laptop away and was leaning his head back, eyes closed. His face, once stern and focused, was now ghostly pale. A thin layer of sweat coated his forehead. His breathing was shallow and ragged. He just looked wrong. Zariah's first instinct was to look away, to mind her own business like she'd been taught. He was a stranger, and an intimidating one. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head, "Keep to yourself. Don't cause no trouble." But then she saw his hand on the armrest between them. His fingers started to twitch, clenching and unclenching in a desperate, silent rhythm. "Sir," she whispered, her voice nearly lost in the roar of the storm. "Are you okay?" No response. His eyes stayed shut. She hesitated, her heart pounding. The flight attendants were strapped in their seats, their faces tight with worry about the turbulence, their eyes scanning the whole cabin. No one else seemed to see the quiet drama happening in seat 14B. Then, Arthur Vance made a sound, a low groan that was swallowed by the plane shuddering. His head slumped forward, his body went limp. He wasn't sleeping. He had collapsed. For a second, Zariah froze. The world slowed to a crawl. The crying baby, the rattling bins, the worried flight attendant, it all faded away. All she could see was the ashen face of the man next to her. All she could hear was her father's voice, a clear, calm echo from years ago, "You breathe, you focus, and you act." The fear didn't disappear, but something else rose up to meet it, purpose. A clarity that cut right through the chaos. She unbuckled her seatbelt. "Help," she yelled, her voice shockingly strong. "I need help. He's not breathing right." A flight attendant named Sonia, whose name tag she'd noticed, looked over, her eyes wide with alarm. But just as Sonia started to unbuckle, the plane took a violent dip, throwing them all back in their seats. The captain's voice came on again, urgent this time, telling everyone, including the crew, to stay seated. They were trapped. Zariah knew, with a terrifying certainty, that they couldn't wait. He was running out of time. She leaned over him, her small hands shaking. She pressed 2 fingers to his neck, just like her dad showed her, feeling for a pulse. It was there, but it was weak, thready, and scarily irregular. His chest was barely moving. "Sir. Mr. Vance. Can you hear me?" she said, her voice loud but trembling. He was completely unresponsive. Acting on pure instinct, she knew what to do. With a grunt, she and another passenger who'd noticed the commotion managed to recline his seat all the way. "I need to start compressions," she announced, surprising herself with her own authority. The other passenger looked at her, a 12-year-old girl in a thrift store jacket, with total disbelief. But something in her eyes, a fierce determination, made him nod and help clear the space. "Don't you die on me," she whispered, a plea to him, to God, to her father's memory. She placed her hands on his chest, one over the other, laced her fingers, locked her elbows, and started to push, just like her dad had taught her on a sofa cushion. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. The rhythm was a frantic prayer. Her thin arms ached almost instantly. It took so much force, struggling against the dead weight of a grown man. Tears of fear and exhaustion streamed down her face. She was just a little girl. What was she doing? How could she possibly make a difference? But the image of her father's proud smile pushed her on. You have a hero's heart, kiddo. The other passengers watched in stunned silence, a pocket of quiet awe in the middle of a storm-tossed plane. The flight attendant, Sonia, was on the in-flight phone, her voice a mix of panic and professionalism, relaying the situation to doctors on the ground. We have an unresponsive male, mid-50s, she said, her eyes locked on Zariah. A child, a passenger is performing CPR. Zariah didn't hear a thing. Her world had shrunk to the count in her head, the pressure of her hands, and the desperate hope that this stranger would live. The plane lurched again, but she held her ground, her small body a brace against the chaos. She wasn't just Zariah Coleman from Baltimore anymore. She was a lifeline. She was David Coleman's daughter, and she wasn't letting go. Section 3, The Whisper That Broke the Silence. The emergency landing in Denver was rough. The plane hit the rain-slicked runway with a jarring thud, tires screaming. The second the aircraft stopped, the cabin door flew open and a team of paramedics stormed in, all business. The bubble of intense focus around Zariah finally burst, and the world rushed back in. They gently moved her aside. We've got it from here, kid. You did good, one of them said, giving her a brief, respectful nod. Zariah stumbled back, her whole body shaking with adrenaline and exhaustion. Her arms felt like lead as she collapsed into her seat, gasping for air. She watched them work on Arthur Vance with defibrillators and 4 lines, a whirlwind of medical gear. Sonia, the flight attendant, rushed to her side and wrapped a warm airline blanket around her. Honey, you were so brave, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You did a very, very good thing. Zariah could only nod, her throat too tight to speak. She watched as they stabilized Mr. Vance, his heartbeat now a steady, weak beep on their monitor. They loaded him onto a stretcher, an oxygen mask on his face. The immediate danger was over, and it was over because of her. The thought was dizzying. As the paramedics started wheeling him away, something strange happened. Arthur Vance's eyes fluttered open. They were hazy and confused, but they were open. His gaze drifted weakly around the cabin before it landed, with surprising focus, right on Zariah. He raised a trembling hand and rasped something to the paramedic. The paramedic paused, looked at Zariah, then back at the man on the stretcher. He nodded. Just for a second. They wheeled the stretcher right up to her row. Zariah looked up, her heart pounding all over again. Arthur Vance, the cold, distant millionaire, was looking right at her. The wall of importance around him had crumbled, leaving behind someone raw and fragile. He gestured for her to come closer. Hesitantly, Zariah leaned in. His breath was warm and smelled like antiseptic as he struggled to speak. She had to lean so close that her ear was almost touching his mouth. And then he whispered that it wasn't a thank you. It wasn't an offer of money. It was something so much bigger, something that cut right through time and circumstance and hit the very center of her soul. Your father, he breathed, the words barely a sound. David Coleman. The paramedic. Years ago, there was a fire, a car wreck. He pulled me out. He saved my life then. Zariah froze solid. The world spun. Her father. How could this man possibly know her father? Arthur took another shaky breath, his eyes locked on hers. In them, she saw a lifetime of memory and gratitude. He gave me a second chance, he whispered. And today, his daughter, you've just given me a third. He paused, a single tear tracking down his temple. You have his heart, Zariah. You have his hero's heart. Those last words were a direct echo of her father's, a phrase she treasured for years. Hearing them from this stranger's lips was a lightning strike to her soul. It was too much. The walls she'd built around her grief and her quiet life just shattered. The dam broke. Zariah stepped back, her hand flying to her mouth as a sob escaped, then another, and another. It wasn't a cry of sadness, but of overwhelming release. It was for her father, the man who was both a ghost and her guardian angel. It was for the impossible, cosmic coincidence that had put her on this plane, in this seat, next to this man. It was for the little girl who felt she didn't belong, who had just been told, in the most powerful way imaginable, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The paramedics wheeled Arthur Vance away, leaving Zariah standing in the aisle, wrapped in a blanket and crying, as the entire cabin watched, finally understanding they had witnessed more than just a medical emergency. They had witnessed a miracle. CTA and conclusion. In the days that followed, Zariah Coleman's world changed. She was no longer an invisible girl on a plane. While she was protected from the media storm around the miracle at 30,000 feet, her life was altered forever. Arthur Vance survived and made a full recovery. And the very first thing he did was get in touch with Zariah and her mother. He didn't just send a card or a check. He flew to Baltimore, not with a show of wealth, but with a quiet humility Zariah never would have imagined. He sat in their small apartment and told Lena the full story about her husband, David. He described the fiery car crash from over a decade ago, how David Coleman had risked his own life to pull him from the burning car seconds before it exploded. Arthur had tried to find David afterward to thank him, but David, being David, had just said it was his job and disappeared, never wanting any recognition. Arthur looked at Zariah, his eyes full of a new light. "Your father saved me from a death I probably deserved that day," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was a different man back then. Ruthless, selfish. He gave me a chance to be better. And you, Zariah, you reminded me of that. You saved me from myself as much as you saved me from dying." True to his word, Arthur Vance established the David Coleman Foundation for Baltimore Youth. It was a multi-million-dollar trust to provide scholarships and opportunities for underprivileged kids in their city, kids just like Zariah, full of potential but held back by their circumstances. He bought Zariah and Lena a new, comfortable house in a safe neighborhood, making sure Lena would never have to work 2 jobs again. He funded Zariah's entire education, telling her she could be anything she wanted to be, a doctor, a pilot, a hero, just like her dad. Zariah's life was transformed, not by a handout, but by a connection forged in crisis. The words whispered on that plane did more than make her cry, they gave her back a piece of her father and showed her a part of herself she never knew was there. She learned that courage isn't about not being afraid, but about acting anyway. She learned that kindness is a current that connects us all, sometimes across decades and impossible divides. Zariah's story is a powerful reminder that our true worth isn't about what we have, but who we are. It's in our ability to be compassionate, our willingness to act, and the quiet strength in our hearts. A little girl who felt invisible showed the world that one single act of courage can echo through a lifetime, changing not just one life, but many. And sometimes, the most important whispers are the ones that remind us who we were always meant to be. What did you think of Zariah's incredible story? Let us know in the comments below. And if you were moved by this journey, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspirational stories that remind us of the good in the world. Thanks for watching.